On May 11th, competitive cyclist Mo Wilson was shot and killed in Austin, Texas. She was in town getting ready for a big race. While she was there, she also spent some time with a fellow cyclist named Colin Strickland. Strickland went swimming with Mo on the day she was killed. The two were romantically linked, although the exact timing and nature of the relationship isn't clear. After the murder, investigators discovered evidence leading them to Colin Strickland's live-in girlfriend, Kaitlin Armstrong. Armstrong was questioned by police, but then left town. Then an arrest warrant for murder was issued for Armstrong on May 17th, and now, after more than a month on the run, Armstrong is in custody, and tonight we have all the details about her change of appearance, where she went, and how she was captured. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. The story of Kaitlin Armstrong is really a little confusing, a little unusual, and something that, you know, every time you peel back another layer of what happened here or what investigators say happened here, it gets a little more shocking. And I want to begin tonight talking about yoga. Yoga, right? I mean, I think most of us have at least taken one yoga class, or maybe you've seen one, and you kind of understand everything. It's about the spiritual, the physical, and ultimately it's about calmness and discipline. And it's a way to become, I guess, someone who is more in touch with yourself, more in touch with your being, and just more at peace with the world in general. And you get a little more flexible and everything else. Yoga is great. I mean, so many people do it day in and day out, and it's sort of a way of life. And whenever I think of yoga, that's what I think of. I think of the calmness, the spirituality, the discipline, the control that you have over your emotions, your life, and everything else. It's an escape. It's a way to deal with whatever you're dealing with, whether it's physical, again, or something, you know, spiritual or mental that's going on in your life. And you can escape into yoga, and you can get recentered and you know, move on. In this case, though, the accused murderer, Kaitlin Armstrong, when she was on the run, there's a picture of her with a yoga mat. With a yoga mat. I mean, she has that connection to yoga. She's an instructor. This is a big part of her life. And to think of that, right? Someone who has taken so much time to study and practice yoga is somehow involved in a brutal murder and then goes on the lam. And this whole issue of yoga becomes very central to the search for this wanted woman, this accused murderer. And there you see her. She's at the airport. She's got the yoga mat with her. Now, on another note, let's talk about plastic surgery. Why don't we, right? Plastic surgery, like if you're going to get a nose job or a facelift, whatever you're going to get, you do it so you look better, right? Or maybe you have to do it because you're on TV, but you look better and you get noticed, right? That's really the main reason that we go to get plastic surgery, to look younger, just so, you know, people kind of like, hey, look at him, look at her. You know, you look a little better, you feel better about yourself, but your outward appearance is a little bit more noticeable. Now we take that same concept and apply it to Kaitlin Armstrong. This is what I'm talking about. She apparently had some plastic surgery, maybe a little nose job. You can see the before and after. And the whole point for her was not to necessarily look better, and she may look better or worse, I know that's up to you to figure out, but to look different and not get noticed. Her world is so different. Every aspect of it is you know, the opposite of what you would think it would be. Getting plastic surgery so nobody notices you. Getting plastic surgery so you look different, because, you know, you look at the before picture, she looks fine. You look at the after picture, she still looks fine, but she looks much different than she did in the before. And apparently that's part of what happened as Kaitlin Armstrong, after being questioned by police, took off and was on the lam for more than a month. One of the things she did, changed her appearance a little bit. Now, Anne Mercogliana is a reporter for Inside Edition, and she had an opportunity to speak with some folks down in Costa Rica where Kaitlin Armstrong was found. Apparently she was staying at a hostel. It was like a yoga hostel, and the man she spoke with, Zachary Paulson, is a friend of the owner of where Kaitlin Armstrong was staying while she was wanted as a fugitive for murder. We spoke with Anne today and have a lot more information, a lot more details about what Kaitlin Armstrong was doing and how she got captured.
When we learned that Kaitlin Armstrong had been arrested in Costa Rica, we started calling around. We have a producer who, very tenacious, he started calling all of the hostels in Costa Rica, asking questions. And, you know, one person, one employee at Don John's said, yes, you know, we had an arrest here yesterday. And our producer said, great, let's get this on camera. So we quickly set up an interview with a friend of the owner. And while we were chatting with this friend, Zachary, we asked him, did she leave anything behind? And he said, you know, matter of fact, yes, she left behind 2 passports. Do you want to see them? So we said, sure. And he took out these 2 passports. One had Kaitlin's name, one had her sister, Christine. And then he said, we also have a receipt. Do you want to see the receipt? Sure. So Zachary pulled out a receipt for $6,350, and it was for what looked like a cosmetic surgery center. So we asked him about that. He told us that Kaitlin actually had a bandage on her nose, and he noticed it, and he asked her about it. He saw the blood inside her nostrils, and she was explaining it as a surfing injury. And he said, you know, something wasn't quite right about that story, even though he didn't know who she really was. He just thought it was an odd explanation, the way the injury looked, the bandage, and now we see what she looks like. And, you know, people do believe her nose looks much more narrow. We know she has brown hair, and we know she's finally back in custody. So we know from the U.S. Marshals she was taken into custody June 29th at this hostel. We know Zachary Paulson had been staying there since September. And he spent some time with her there. He told us that she was actually doing yoga classes there for room and board, and that she had complained to some people there about having money troubles. He also showed us the exact spot where she was arrested, sort of an outdoor lobby. And Zachary described when she was arrested. He showed us where she was arrested in this outdoor lobby space. A beautiful hostel, by the way. A lot of surfers go there. He told us that celebrities have passed through there. When she was arrested, she told police she had no documents. She kept telling police she had no documents. And in fact, she did have documents, and she left them behind in this locked box in her room. And we got a chance to see her room as well, and her communal bathroom, and, you know, quite a beautiful hostel she was staying at, and definitely a place where you could get lost. She really blended in at this hostel, but Zachary did tell us that the owner's mother actually had suspicions about her. When she was taken into custody by local authorities, she was freaked out. It was described to us, but she didn't seem to put up any resistance, it didn't seem, from what we were told. Our witness didn't know who Kaitlin was until after the arrest. While she was there, he noted that her injury on her face, her nose, the bandage, the bleeding, didn't really add up to her story that she had some kind of a surfing accident. That raised eyebrows. We asked, did anybody have any suspicions about her? Did she act suspiciously while she was there? And he said, you know, the owner's mom was suspicious about her. Something just didn't sit well with her, but otherwise it seems like she just blended in and got lost. In addition to leaving passports, they showed us her COVID vaccination card was also left. Also, they said she left a Social Security card, and they also showed us a credit card. So she left quite a few things, and it is interesting that they weren't taken when she was arrested. The The owner's friend told us that when she checked in, she didn't have to provide any identification, and she went by the name of Ari, during her time there. It's a really beautiful place, really laid back. You could see all these surfboards hanging around, these surfers. There was a whole yoga studio, and Zachary, the owner's friend, told us this is where Kaitlin does her yoga. She was teaching classes in order to have room and board to stay there. Probably like any hostel, it's a lot of people coming and going. They mentioned that celebrities pass through. You know, definitely a good place to fly under the radar. She's back in Austin, and she'll be facing this murder charge now after a long journey on the run.
Again, our thanks to Inside Edition and Mercogliano for all that information, that reporting. Unbelievable developments in this case. Let me bring in special guest joining us tonight in Salt Lake City, Utah, private investigator Jensen, who's been covering this story from the beginning for us, and I believe was the first one who said, hey, maybe, just maybe, she's using her sister's identity. And lo and behold, Jason, what do they find at the hostel? What did she leave behind? A passport with her sister's name on it.
Right. Yeah, Benny. We first announced that on the show on the 14th of June. So, yeah, we've been right on this, that from the beginning that she was likely traveling under the name of Kaitlin Armstrong. So she either borrowed the passport or stole it from her sister. So it'll be interesting to find out from, you know, the Marshal Service what the situation was surrounding how she obtained that ID.
Yeah, if she got it and her sister was cooperating, that's a problem for her sister Christine. But we'll see how that all develops. What are your thoughts, though? How surprised are you about where they found her? In Costa Rica at a yoga surfing hostel. I've never heard of that, but apparently they're relatively popular down there.
Right, yeah. It's kind of a mixed, situation, her being found there. On one hand, it's no surprise that she did not completely leave her roots. She's a yoga instructor and went to an area or a place that would really feature that kind of service and offered herself there for employment. The really surprise was she did the opposite of what everyone suspected. People were claiming that she likely ran to Canada because it was close to her roots in Michigan. So the opposite of Canada would be down in the tropical areas like that, like Costa Rica, Belize, and so on. So that was a really surprise to us all.
Absolutely. Now, we're looking at some pictures of her and clearly changing her appearance. We heard that she had the bandage on the nose. I'm looking at that nose. It's a different nose. It really changes her look to a degree. And she obviously changed the hair as well. I mean, if I was looking at the picture on the left, the before, and I saw her on the right, I would not recognize her. There's no way I'd recognize her.
You're right, Vinny. I mean, there's such a drastic change that she underwent in 43 days. Clearly, what she had, the procedure she had is known as an alar base reduction. That's where you reduce the size of the flares of your nostrils. So that procedure usually takes 7 to 10 days to heal from. So as you can see from her booking photo, there's no sign of a scar or fresh injury. So yeah, she had enough time to be on the run that she did all this creative changes to herself, her nose. She looks like she's got some lip filler, and she changed her hair, the length of her hair and her color.
Yeah, I mean, completely, and obviously she's not smiling here in the booking photos for obvious reasons, but still, drastic change, but she couldn't shed the yoga mat. I mean, that was it. It was the yoga mat. She just seemed connected to it. And like, if you are wanted for murder, right, and you are on the run, I mean, it would seem to me common sense would be to run away from everything that you know, everything that's been a part of your life, that's connected to your life, but she just couldn't leave the yoga mat alone.
Right, clearly that's her passion. she would have been better off to completely reinvent herself, be a waitress in Iowa or something before sticking with her yoga roots, because clearly from what we've heard from Deputy Marshal Fila is they were looking for her doing yoga retreats and yoga employment while down there in Costa Rica. So her habits eventually is what rebuild herself.
Well, the good news is, right, when you're in a cell, if you're locked out by yourself or with someone, you can do your yoga. I mean, she can still continue to do yoga. She may not have a yoga mat, might be a hard surface, but she can still do her yoga to prepare for whatever's next for her. Interesting other thing, she went by the name Ari apparently and was bartering for the room and board rather than paying for it. She was kind of working for it. So I'll do the classes, you let me stay here.
Right, yeah, she's hoping to extend the money she got from the sale of her Jeep or whatever cash she had on hand as far as it would go on, because she certainly wouldn't be able to establish employment or something where she's going to have to identify herself, provide identification, and establish herself, because eventually her name would pop up, whether it be on Interpol or something like that.
And how about the owner's mother had a little... Mother's intuition is something, isn't it, Jason? It's almost like a private investigator's intuition. That something's just not right here. Wasn't sitting right with her. Someone sort of floats into town and, you know, no one just, I guess people can float into town, but she didn't come from that life. So I don't think she would have that aura of being sort of a drifter in her life because she's never really been that.
Right. I think she was probably not fitting the stereotype that she was trying to portray she was part of.
Yeah, I am shocked. I really thought she was going to be, as you said, up north, but she did actually apparently take that ride when she went to the airport, Liberty Airport in Newark, New Jersey, and ended up in Costa Rica. So thinking about how she was able to do this, and allude, how would you evaluate the job that was done by the marshals? Because you look at it, you start off, it's a needle in a haystack, right? It's a needle. You could go, she had the lead time, she could go pretty much anywhere in the world. But do you think the fact that she apparently used the sister's name, like you said, they must have been tracking that to at least have some idea of where in the world she could be?
Right. Once they learned that she was traveling under the name of Kaitlin Armstrong is what tipped them off to the flight from Newark to Costa Rica. And then at that point, they just had to contact and cooperate with the Costa Rican authorities. But until that moment, she almost had the perfect getaway because she was working with cash only. She had no digital footprints at all. You know, it's real easy. If you can release yourself from the digital environment, phones, laptops, and the like, then you can really fall off the modern 21st century grid, because everybody's so used to those devices and amenities that cash on hand, you know, it's almost a rarity now that you can go to somebody and pay with cash. Because, like, for instance, during COVID, everybody was interested in just card transaction.
Absolutely. All right, Jason Jensen, private investigator, staying with us. When we come back, we've got more to talk about here in the saga of Kaitlin Armstrong, who is now in custody and in Austin, Texas tonight. Also, coming up next hour. In Dodgeville, Wisconsin, Sean Pickett has been charged with the brutal murder of his mother and for killing her dog. But the defendant has allegedly claimed several different defenses. Which one is most viable? He was framed by her boyfriend. He was possessed with evil and blacked out. Or he killed in self-defense. We break it all down with our think tank.
Did Mr. Pickett complain of any injuries to his own body?
No.
Did you observe any fresh or significant injuries on Mr. Pickett's body?
No, I did not.
That was a 43-day effort that was initiated here by the U.S. Marshals
Lone Star Fugitive Task Force, where then was elevated to a major case that went back to our headquarters, where we were provided with additional resources, funding, all those types of special investigators that really have a specialized role in something, and then eventually got our Costa Rican officials involved once we knew she fled to that country. Once we had the information and validated that she had landed there in Costa Rica, we also got some quick real-time information that she took some transportation to a specific area, and those officials there in Costa Rica were able to assist us. And we knew by her pattern that she was probably going to be frequenting some type of yoga studios within a specific area. And really, it was boots on the ground and interviewing. And, you know, we were kind of I feel like the Costa Ricans were right behind Kaitlin at times. And then finally, you know, we're able to, get her there at that hostel hotel.
Unbelievable story. Kaitlin Armstrong was involved in a love triangle, according to investigators, and murdered a woman who was involved with her boyfriend. Then she went on the run. And we go back to that picture. She's at the airport. She's got a yoga mat with her. Like, what sort of fugitive escapes and is running around with a yoga mat? Someone who you're going to get and find and capture at a surfing yoga hostel in Costa Rica. Unbelievable development. Still with us tonight, private investigator Jensen, and joining us now in Los Angeles, California, retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon, and in Salt Lake City, Utah, retired police commander and host of the incredible Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King, is with us. Great to see everyone tonight. Bobby, you're in LA. You ever traveled down to Costa Rica for a little weekend at the yoga surfing hostel? Do a little surfing, a little yoga?
Are you going to laugh when I tell you I did? In fact, do just that. My wife is into yoga, and we went down to a surf camp that was owned by two brothers, American brothers, down in Nosara, Costa Rica, and Malpais, Costa Rica. And I spent a week at each place doing yoga and surfing. That's where I learned to surf.
Of course he did. You know, I just throw that at him, like out of left field. And the answer is, of course I did. Wow. Okay. So you've been down in that area. So when you've got Brandon Fielder from the U.S. Marshal's Office saying, yeah, we kind of knew where she went because she was using her sister's name, just like Jason Jensen said, and they had the general area. They know she's into yoga. How difficult of a task was it, do you think, from that point forward, Bobby?
Well, I don't think it was a difficult task. It might have been a time-consuming task, from my understanding, that you go to every yoga studio and you ask for a roster of their people, their clients or their instructors, and you start looking at names and see if any of her aliases pop up or her actual name. So you just start looking at sign-in sheets and things like that, because a lot of these instructors are paid by how many students are in their class. So they have to have a sign-in sheet to determine how many students are in that class. So you start looking at the sign-in sheets, you start looking at the instructor names, and it could take you a while in a place like that has so many of these yoga studios. But it wouldn't be a difficult task. It might be time-consuming, and like you heard the marshal said, they would, the Costa Rican authorities might have been a step behind her here and there, but they were certainly on her trail for a little while.
All right, Mike King, let's go. Let me go through the timeline here on where she was at different points. We begin May 13th. Kaitlin Armstrong sells her 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee at the South Austin, Texas CarMax, right? You bring it to CarMax, they give you a check. You walk away, you got money. About $11,000, $12,000 she got. May 14th, she goes to Austin International Bergstrom Airport, boards a flight to Houston. So she goes from Austin to Houston. Then, again, May 14th, lands in Houston and makes a connecting flight to New York's LaGuardia Airport. And that's what threw me off in this whole thing. I was thinking maybe just hide in the city with 8 million other people, but no. May 18th, Armstrong was dropped off at Newark Liberty International Airport. That is in New Jersey, across the river. And then on the 18th, apparently she landed in San Jose. Not San Jose, California, but she apparently knew the way to San Jose, Costa Rica. And on June 29th, arrested at a hostel on Santa Teresa Beach. And when they arrested her, Mike King, after this tracking all these movements they're able to track, she looks, I think, a lot different. I mean, looks a lot different, and apparently using the name Ari. What are your thoughts, Mike, on this whole job that was done by the marshals with the help of the folks from Costa Rica?
It's really interesting when we go back and look at the very start of this thing. If this was someone who was not guilty or feeling guilty, why on earth dump the car so quickly? Why on earth make these roundabout pathways? Once she lands in New Jersey, we know that she also is seen taking a vehicle up to the campground, same campground where her sister happens to work, and then makes her way back to Newark. And if I'm catching the timeline correct, Vinny, she actually jumps on a plane from Newark, takes a quick stop at LaGuardia, and then heads down. When I looked online, the only plane I could find that did that route was Spirit Airline, the discount airline, where obviously she's concerned about saving money. But she's putting these things in order, these things to kind of throw us off the track. We got people thinking, I wonder if she's going to Canada. And what she does is she does the 180. And she heads south and heads across the border. She can't do that without a passport. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that passport. Was it given or was it stolen? And there's got a lot of splaining that needs to be done on that one. But then she gets down there, jumps a car, takes a car over to the beach where she's finally captured. But like you were saying, this changing the identity, I mean, it's pretty tough when we look at photographs. The angles are a little bit different in the pictures. But I have to agree, it is so compelling, $6,300 to a plastic surgeon, and clearly there's some differences there. There does look like there's some Botox in the lips to kind of change things. Without a smile, it's a completely different looking person anyway. But all these things are pointing to someone who's trying to get under the radar and stay completely away from what eventually happened, and that is the long arm of the law finally catching up.
Yeah, Jason, Jensen, I thought for sure New York City. New York City, you can walk around with a mask everywhere and you'll blend in and nobody will see your face. And if she cut, she had that long flowing hair, you cut the hair, you put a mask on, who's going to recognize her anywhere? No one. Who's going to pay attention to her? No one.
Right, Benny. That standing by itself would have been a pretty smart move, but the difference is the cost of living between New York City and Costa Rica are completely different, where she can extend her money down in Costa Rica almost tenfold. So that seemed to be the smart move going down there, is to try and make that money that she got from the sale of the Jeep or whatever she had on hand last as long as possible.
Yeah, so Bobby, Mike brought up a great point about the family. Did she get help in all this? And I don't know if she did, but she had possession, allegedly, of her sister's passport. That is big time trouble.
Yeah, especially, helping a murderer escape, after the fact is like you said, big trouble. So I'm sure they've already interviewed the sister pretty hard, and they're looking at the facts of that. She's probably not going to give up her sister. She's probably going to say she stole it from her sister. She's probably going to try to cover for her sister, I would imagine. And so, yeah, it might be a tough case to make. Because there's only two people involved, the two sisters, and they know exactly what happened and how she got it. So if they concoct a story and they may have done it already, she may have said, just say I stole it from you. Then the question becomes, why didn't you report it stolen? Did your sister come and see you? Things like that. But yeah, it could be, harboring a murder fugitive, is trouble, and it's problematic for the sister right now.
I am still looking at these pictures, and to me, drastic differences, but not enough to stop the Costa Rican authorities from finding her. I mean, they tracked her down, regardless of how different she looked. Jason, Jensen, appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much, sir. Bobby Chico and Mike King staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the underlying case. Why were they chasing her? We're going to dive a little deeper into the tragic murder of Mo Wilson.
cyclists working their way up the hill or participating in Gravel Locos, a 150-mile gravel bike ride located 2 hours outside of Austin, is where Anna Mariah Wilson was headed on May 14th.
After just 2 seasons, she rose to the top of both mountain and gravel racing in the nation.
She had kind of just started being at the top level, and at 25 years old, for sure, her career was just getting started.
But that promising future was cut short. Mariah Wilson was found shot to death a few days before that race.
On May 11, 2022, Mariah passed away in Austin, Texas, while she prepared to compete in the Gravel Locos bike race.
Now cyclists have gathered to remember the rising star, holding a short ride in her honor. According to court documents, officers responded to a residence where Wilson was observed lying on the bathroom floor, covered in blood. She was later pronounced dead. Investigators think she may have been the victim of a jealous rival. Wilson had dated pro cyclist Colin Strickland, who, according to Wilson's friend, had an on-again, off-again relationship with another cyclist, Kaitlin Armstrong. Police reports state that Armstrong had discovered Strickland was having a romantic relationship with Wilson, even though Armstrong and Strickland were still dating. Armstrong was so angry, Armstrong wanted to kill Wilson. Strickland, in a statement to an Austin American-Statesman reporter, said he only dated Wilson a week or so before he and Kaitlin reconciled their relationship, though he says he continued to see Mo at cycling events and in public settings. Armstrong, who was interviewed by police, rolled her eyes in an angry manner at this. On the day of Wilson's death, Strickland confirmed they were together swimming at a local pool and later grabbed a bite to eat. Armstrong, on the other hand, was not seen with Wilson that day, but the car she drives, a 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee, was captured on surveillance footage at the house where Wilson was staying. In her police interview, Armstrong made no effort to deny this and provided no explanation as to why her vehicle was there. Partway through this interview, Armstrong requested to leave and was allowed to do so. The suggestion that Wilson may have been part of a love triangle prompted the family to state that she was not in a relationship at the time of her death, but that has not stopped investigators from charging Armstrong with first-degree murder.
We're here today to say that the violence that took the life of Mo was not okay, and we are not okay.
So the alleged motive here, obvious, right? It is jealousy, it is rage by Kaitlin Armstrong towards Mo Wilson. That's the allegation. Still with us, retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon, retired police commander and host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King. And joining us now in New York City, psychotherapist, host of Talking Live on Facebook Watch and the Bite Side podcast, Dr. Robbie Ludwig is with us. Dr. Robbie, let me ask you this. This is the part of this case, again, I don't understand. She's a yoga instructor. Yoga is her life. Isn't that about discipline, calmness, wellness? Yet there's this allegation of this raging jealousy that motivated her to commit murder. How do we reconcile all of this?
The yoga clearly was not working for her. Kaitlin clearly had an issue with rage and also feeling like she had ownership over her boyfriend. And what I call this is an abandonment killer. Kaitlin felt like her boyfriend was abandoning her, and that was not okay. And basically, these types of individuals see things in a very black and white way. And they think if they get rid of the lover, then they can have their boyfriend back, or they see it as punishment to both the boyfriend and the lover for interfering with Kaitlin's life and well-being. So it doesn't matter what actually happens, it matters how Kaitlin perceived the relationship.
And Mike, I think about some of the evidence in this case pointing towards Kaitlin Armstrong, some strong evidence, and she seemingly had no explanation as to why her car was there at the time of the murder.
Yeah, she doesn't confess to anything, but she gives an interesting behavioral admission when she kind of nods and says, yeah, I think you're right. This would be really hard to explain. And then, of course, how do you get past the evidence of immediately dumping the car, immediately heading out of town? I was thinking earlier, you know, if she ran to New York to get to the border, or just because she has a family member up there, she's still pretty darn good on her feet because she comes up with this scheme to go exactly the opposite direction and head down into South America. And by doing that, she throws a curveball that maybe people weren't expecting. And yet I think we know pretty quickly, the police were saying, hey, we think she made it to LaGuardia, and now we get this confirmation. I think they were on top of that idea that she might be using someone else's ID from the get-go.
Bobby Chacon, what's the difference between chasing someone like this who obviously not a career criminal, right, and tracking down the evidence and what they leave behind versus, you know, maybe someone who's in more of an organized type of operation, whether it's drug dealing or the mob or something like that? Because from my perspective, this is like the amateur criminal.
Yeah, but you know, I was personally involved in the hunt for Eric Rudolph in the mountains of North Carolina. And he had told people for years that he was going to go up in those mountains and hide from the feds. He had planned it. He had buried supplies in 5-gallon buckets, freeze-dried fruits and canned stuff. And he had matches in each of these things. And he hid them all over the mountains up there. And as you know, he was able to elude in a small area, but a very dense forest for 2 years, and was only caught because he ran out of food, came down into town and was arrested by a sharp uniformed officer found him rifling through a dumpster. So you have people that did, you know, like a Rudolph who planned it. This was a crime that I don't think she planned. I think she flew into a jealous rage and she just committed this crime on the spur of the moment and then had to sell her car. All of these obvious things we're talking about because she didn't have time to plan it so that it would look like normal activity. All of this makes her look, as Mike said, makes her look guilty because she didn't have the time to plan it. Now, that's not to say it wasn't premeditated. She took that weapon out of her house. She drove over to that girl's house where she knew she was staying, and she murdered her. That's premeditation. But it wasn't planned out that long in advance. And so the things we're talking about now are a result of her not planning out, you know, this crime, because I think she realized her boyfriend was spending time with the ex-girlfriend that day. He made some excuse that his phone battery was dying. You know, that's like the oldest excuse in the book. And it pushed her into this rage, and she didn't have a lot of time to plan.
Bobby Chacon, Mike King, great to see you. Great to have you on the show tonight. Dr. Robbie Ludwig's going to stay with us when we come back. I have a big question for Dr. Robbie Ludwig about why would she allegedly go after the girlfriend and not her own boyfriend when she was acting out allegedly in this jealous rage. Also, coming up next hour. In Green Bay, Wisconsin, Taylor Shabusiness is accused of having sex with a man, severing his head, and leaving it in a bucket in his mother's basement. After a competency evaluation, Shabusiness was back in court. We have the details.
But how about a trial starting on October 24? Mr. Jolly, does that work?
That works.
That is Colin Strickland, the man in the middle of this love triangle. Kaitlin Armstrong was his live-in girlfriend. Mo Wilson was someone that he had some sort of a relationship with. And she's the one who allegedly was shot and killed by Kaitlin Armstrong. So Strickland told police that he did have a romantic relationship with Mo Wilson, Anna Mariah Wilson. They call her Mo Wilson. For 2 weeks in October while he was on a break. He was on a break with Kaitlin Armstrong. That was his story to police. Let me read from the affidavit so you get a better idea of some of the alleged facts in this case. Jane, this is someone who gave a tip. Jane advised Wilson and Strickland have had multiple romantic relationships together and described it as an on-again, off-again relationship. Jane, again, the anonymous caller, stated Wilson's and Strickland's romantic relationship started during Wilson's first trip to Austin, Texas in the fall of 2021. Jane advised Armstrong discovered Wilson's phone number and contacted Wilson several times. Jane advised the last time Armstrong called Wilson, she told Wilson she was with Strickland and Wilson needed to stay away from him. Then another caller who refused to be identified but advised that she was with Armstrong in January of 22. The caller advised Armstrong just discovered Strickland was having a romantic relationship. Strickland was with Wilson, even though Armstrong and Strickland were still dating. The caller advised Armstrong became furious and was shaking in anger. Armstrong told the caller Armstrong was so angry, Armstrong wanted to kill Wilson. Armstrong proceeded to tell the caller that Armstrong had either recently purchased a firearm or was going to. Dr. Robbie Ludwig still with us. Why, in this case, again, if these allegations are true, she's presumed innocent, they've got to prove it all, just allegations at this point. But if they are in a love triangle situation, why would someone go after the other woman, for lack of a better word here, they weren't married, but the other woman, as opposed to going after your own boyfriend, who was the one who was lying and allegedly cheating on you?
Yes, it seems not to make sense, but Kaitlin, like many of these abandonment killers, they blame the lover. They blame the extramarital person for their relationship's demise. And so in their mind, they feel if they get rid of the lover, then they can resume having the romantic and loving relationship that they had previously. And Kaitlin didn't want to kill off Colin because she loved him and she probably had fantasies that they could still be together and have a strong relationship. She just needed to manage getting rid of the woman who was interfering with their perfect romance and relationship. And we know this is probably so far from the truth. I'm sure Kaitlin and Colin had a very difficult relationship because women like Kaitlin often stalk, are very possessive, are high drama, and it's hard for them to feel secure. And very often they're very suffocating in relationships as well.
And what are your thoughts about Colin? I mean, apparently telling police it was, we were on a break and we had this brief thing and then we were just friends, versus the tipsters who were calling in saying, no, this was an on-again, off-again relationship.
Well, it sounds like Colin was used to fibbing a bit about his relationships, and I'm sure he felt and feels very guilty about what happened to Mo. This was nothing he ever imagined or ever wanted. He's a young guy. He's allowed to date as many women as he wants, and he probably felt restricted in a way that he was not able to get out of. So this is just really tragic for everyone involved. And, Kaitlin, basically, if she is found guilty, if she allegedly did commit this crime, it's really sad because her issues basically ruined her life. She could have had a good life if she was mentally stable, but clearly did not have the wherewithal to manage these kinds of upsetting but normal conflicts that happen when in
every day, happen every day. And the yoga should have helped it. Dr. Robbie Ludwig, thank you so much. We'll be right back.